Hello again. So it looks like you can't take the contract while on the way out, which is unfortunate, because I definitely took this contract and got a crash before, but alright then. So I'm going to do something fun and for maximal science instead, and just kind of re-carry out this contract off screen, because I've basically done, I've kind of demonstrated I've got enough delta V to get into orbit, so I'm going to try to crash it in the moon. So there we go. That's really all it took. Just a little bit of extra delta V towards the moon, so we're going to crash into a nice sunlit part of the moon. And I could adjust and such, but so I'm going to set things up so that I try to slow down a little bit on the way to the moon with that upper stage. So let's see, just separate now. We're going to abandon the Aegina. Where are you, tanks? Here, hydrazine. I find that's one of the easier ways to do that. No, I don't want you to do anything about it. I just want the tanks to be on. Alright, and now let's just rotate, just spin away. And we're charging up because we no longer need to supply power to the avionics on that Aegina. Alright, so we're going to need a new display. So let's just create a fresh one. And I want to get a look at the suicide burn. Okay, so surface, or no, it might be in miscellaneous actually. Miscellaneous landing predictions, node burn, separator, suicide burn, and time to impact. So those are the values I like to have on hand. Now they will change. They're not perfect values for a number of reasons I'll explain when I actually attempt to crash into the moon, but they're pretty useful for our current attempt. There we go. So what? Add maneuver warp here, so let's just warp closer to the surface of the moon, almost like we're spin stabilized. There we go. So we only have a minute and a half worth of fuel in this, so it's going to be straightforward enough for me to just start burning when we are a minute and a half away from the surface. And I don't know if I've had a probe close enough to the surface to be near moon low, so I might be trying to quickly spam out a bunch of science towards the while we're coming down. Okay, so I'm going to wait until we're just a little closer, and then I'm going to turn myself around, because obviously I want the engine pointed retrograde, so I can slow down on the way down, because we've got 700 delta V, nowhere near enough to stop. Yet a similarly designed craft, like with that same launcher, if you kind of set up your delta V right and you don't have a kind of a big antenna and all the mass that's in a probe like this, can potentially get a soft landing on the moon. In practice, the Soviets did it with an R-7, which like a launcher that was the booster stages and the core stage were really no different from what they used to put Sputnik into orbit. It's just about good upper stage design and good actual hardware design, or it's like a Russian doll, like you're getting to smaller and smaller bits. The trick with RP-0 is keeping avionics control as you drop off tanks, or you drop off a solid stage, or various things as you get lighter and lighter as you approach the moon. Alright, so I feel like that's going to be close enough. Whoa, yeah, that's why I don't like the auto camera. I go in more and more for free camera, because when it arbitrarily kind of makes this decision that you've changed sphere of influence or something I in this case I definitely don't have any idea what it is guessing at. Ooh, and that's probably gonna, yeah. MechJeb decided I was just asking it to spin at like absolute madness. No MechJeb, that is not what I want to do. Okay, so let's point retrograde. There we go. Probably just reduce the RCS power for now. Alright, so when I'm a little bit closer, I will start spending my fuel. But I'm probably going to get within range of near moon low and get a bunch of science on the way down, and catch a bunch more of these gravity scans. Is that the gravity scan part? Trying to figure out which part it is. Orbital perturbation experiment. Yeah, fair enough. Record perturbation data, gravity scan while in space. Yeah, so Nathan Kell was surprised when I called it a gravity scan just now in the IRC, and yes, the experiment itself is a perturbation thingamajigger, but there we go, getting closer to the moon. And we're actually going to get into, so right now we're in what's called the scale space view. We're viewing the moon from far enough away that it's just kind of using this distant rendering. And there you can see the navel of everything that's being stitched together. That's clearly the south or north pole of the moon. Yeah, we're flying just by the south pole of the texture. You can see where it kind of all glitches together. All right, 7 minutes away. 5 minutes away. So we're going to get close enough where it's going to start rendering it, the actual craters and the actual surface, which is very nice. There we go. So we must have got into near the moon low. So tons of science to start throwing down. So when is it done transmitting at all? It just keeps flapping open and closing. Yep. Lots of science. All right. All right, there we go. So now let's keep heading a bit closer. So you can see how it's rendering. And actually you can see the booster stage that came with us. It's going to beat us to the moon, it looks like. Okay, so we're 2 minutes away from crash. So that's close enough that I'm going to turn on the engines now. Use the RCS to point me, because I don't believe that engine can gimbal, so you definitely want to have kind of at least medium power RCS in order to help that. So the suicide burn counter means I should have started burning earlier if I wanted to slow down. It kind of takes a measure of your thrust-weight ratio, your current velocity, and its current measure of your distance to the surface, and says when you should have burned. So that number will stay mostly the same. If I pitch down, it will kind of vary differently, because right now I'm not actually slowing myself down. I'm not going directly retrograde. And if I were to pitch like this and actually null out, kill some more of my vertical velocity than it would expect, so that number is going to grow. It's going to get larger, which means moves it towards 0. And in practice, you want it to be positive. You want it to be above 0 when you actually come down, when you're actually coming down for a real landing. So it's basically that number plus that number is how long if I had enough fuel that I would want the engine to be burning for to slow down. I'll be more eloquent about it when I actually am trying to soft land something on the moon. Right now I'm just slowing down as much as I can, and shortly before that completely expends itself, I plan to shut down, so I still have a little bit of RCS control before I smash into the ground. So just make sure I've got both tanks open. It's spinning hydrazine from every tank that I have access to. That's a good way to check as well. All right, so that's enough. So I just want to keep a little bit to have RCS control. And it looks like that was all the science we were going to get. Oh, maybe not. There's another Geiger counter over the Midlands and a gravity scan over the Midlands. So in practice, during this final minute of approach, you'd have the real Ranger, Ranger 6, 7, or 8, one of those would have had lots of cameras, and those cameras would have been taking very detailed pictures of the moon, although I think it crashed more directly into it. You can see I'm going to have a very sideways velocity when I come in. And I think coming straight down made them more capable of targeting specifically where it was crashing, the area it was crashing in, so they could kind of choose where they were getting pictures. Whereas here I'm really zooming over the terrain, so that might limit the quality of the pictures I would be able to take. But yeah, I'm successfully going to crash something in the moon. I just don't currently have a contract for that. You have to take the contract before leaving the ground, so before you actually commit for launch, you should definitely check that you have the contracts you think you have. Oh, crashes. You're fun like that. And speaking of crashes, there was the lunar surface. Yes. All right. So that was unfortunately not a completed contract. We're probably going to fail that or no, we didn't have a contract. There was no contract to fail. So I'll just basically build a craft exactly like that and just do a flyby, complete the flyby contract and the orbital contract if it will give me both of those. But thanks for watching. That was our first craft, we gave a controlled crash into the moon. You don't have to have a controlled crash. If you're just trying to do that, you might be able to get enough, you can get that adjusted orbit still while you're still in Earth orbit, as long as your inclination relative to the moon is low enough that your Agena could have done that correction there, and then it really could have just been the Agena with a little bit of science on it that I had crash into the moon. You don't have to have a whole big designed probe like I had there. That's really just useful for getting into orbit of the moon, or if you want to attempt a controlled landing. Well, thanks for watching. Goodbye.